Hello. Thought I would just continue on a little bit with some of the communication. Just I want to touch up UI and maybe a little bit of AI, UI, AI. Doing all the I's today, because I know those can be fairly problematic for new people as well. So I have a program. Actually, I got it on Steam. You don't have to get on Steam. You can get it. You don't even have to use a program. This is Sprite. This is a pixel art program. You could use Photoshop or GIMP or whatever. It all works. And I am going to just very quickly make something. I'm going to go like a little darker here in the grays, and a higher and a higher. Yeah, so we got those. I'm going to just quickly do a spray paint. This isn't going to be anything fancy. Yeah, if I knew what I was doing, apparently. No, let's bring that dark down. Right, and I'm going to make a bit of a messed up blotch, I guess you could say. Really nothing special. Not too worried about the shape. It's a happy. Oh, I messed that up, didn't I? That's okay. Just a happy little cloud. Right, and I'm just going to scribble in here some. Really not going to pay that much attention to some of the details in this. Right, and I'm just going to keep kind of doing that. Kind of go lighter and lighter and try to maintain some of those darker things in there. You know, and highlight some of this stuff. And then if you want to, you can kind of go in and just touch some of that up a bit. And you kind of get this thing. It's not that special. So I'm going to call this little smoke cloud, and I'm going to export that as a smoke cloud, shrink all that down, take that and drop them in my assets. So we will use him. You know what, let's make a folder. I'm going to put a, so that's sitting up top. It's easy to find then. Right, alphabetical. So let's take our smoke cloud and put them in there. So this smoke cloud is going to be part of a particle effect. Right, so I don't want it to be a default texture. I actually want it to be a sprite. And if you don't know what this stuff here is, let's see if I can show you. Right, let's go down and see this guy here, and if I stick him there now, you'll see he kind of looks, and pay attention to these edges and see how it's kind of blurred. If I take to the point, it takes away that blur, and you know, you might even want that blur. I mean, for something like this, for what I'm doing, the blur is probably a good thing because it's going to be smoke, right? Not that important right now. So I'm going to make a new material. We'll call this smoke, and it's the shader up here on it isn't the standard. We're not going to use a standard shader. We're going to use the particle shader, and I'm going to go standard surface, take this guy in, plug him into the albedo, and I'm going to make him as a fade, and take the smoothness down, And that's pretty much it. Right, let's go back over here. So one of the things I wanted to do, continue on with a little more of the communication part, but also a little of the structure as well. And we're going to make an effect. So we're going to call this the explosion. So when we shoot something, we want to see some sort of effect. So here's just a particle system. That's how they look by default. So I think the first thing I want is I want kind of like a wave, I guess. And you could go make a wave texture in it. I'm not going to bother doing that right now though. What I'm going to do is I'm actually going to take the duration down to like 0.25, the lifetime down to 0.25. So now we got this weird little thing happening. I'm going to go over to the emission part, and I'm only going to go like 3. Actually, you know what? I'm going to go 0. And I'm going to go into this burst. So the difference between bursts, like if I do emissions, this is like how much over time, where a burst is more of just like literally a burst, right? And you could say I want, 10 cycles, separate the burst time, over periods of time. So I'm going to go probably like a 0.05 interval. Probably just, we'll do 3 cycles of now we'll go 15 maybe. So we have something like that. Now the other thing I want to do is I want any speed on this thing. No speed. And the shape, so right now it wants to shoot out in like a cone, right? And I could say, you could do it in a donut. But I'm going to go with a sphere. So it's shooting out in every direction. And I'm going to drop the radius down a little bit so everything's kind of in this tight little ball. Okay. And the other thing now I want is is because this is like the beginning shock wave, I guess you could say. I want it to grow over a period of time. So I'm going to add size over lifetime. And if I expand that, I can click on this and see how it highlights. If I open up this guy down here just by clicking on him, any curve I click on pops up in here. So I'm going to adjust it from a 0 to 1. And now we have this thing like that happening. Looks a little weird, but we're getting there. Now the other thing we want is color over lifetime, right? Let's start it with 0 alpha, and we're going to end it with 0 alpha. So somewhere up there we're going to want some alpha, and over here we'll give it a little bit of an alpha boost, and then down here we can adjust the color. So maybe we'll start white, maybe go into a slight bit of yellow, actually let's let's make this one a little red. Okay, something like that. We also don't want this looping, right? Because we just want to go boop, something like that. And even that is a little slow, right? So we have something a little closer to that. I'm going to take the cycles down to 2. Yeah, that's a little better for a burst. And I think that's pretty much all I need to do for the starting point. Right now it doesn't look like much yet, but if I add another particle system under the effects, so it's a child of this one, as you see, this one fires now kind of with it. So this one, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go down also to a really small duration. I'm going to ram the speed up super high and go with a really short lifetime. The emission I'm going to go up to say, let's try 10. But shape, I don't want a cone. I don't want it shooting out like that. I also want this in a sphere, right? And then I'm going to go down to the renderer. And I'm going to turn on this trails, and then in the renderer I'm going to take the billboard and turn that to none. So it's just a, you know, got this kind of stream thing happening. So we want what else do we want with this? Color over lifetime. Let's change that to a gradient, right? And we'll do the same thing with the alpha on this guy, so it doesn't have those sharp start and stops where it's there and then all of a sudden it's not there, or it's not there and all of a sudden it's there. Kind of a bit more of a fading effect. Colors, you know what? Let's go with a darker yellow, I think. And over, I don't know. Maybe I'll just kind of go into a little bit of a lighter yellow. All right, and then I also want to adjust. And we can do the color over the trail as well. But we want the width, right? So the width over the trail right now is 1. We're going to put that as a curve. So if I click on that and bring this guy up, we have this curve. I want them 0 and 0, and then somewhere in the middle, most likely right in the middle, just kind of bring that up, you know, halfway, and 1. We'll have a little more of a something like that. Now the overall width, though, we should bring that down, like it's yeah, something a little closer to that. We also don't want this thing looping, right? We just want to go right now. That's not quite enough. Like it needs a few more. So again, this one's going to use a burst. We only want 1 cycle, and now we can have something a little closer to that. Let's take the rate to 0 and this one to 15. Yeah, that's a little better. And we kind of have that happening. I'm going to take the lifetime down just a little bit, and the duration. And like I said, you can kind of adjust this any which way you want, of course. And then I want another object. We're going to make an empty. I can even name it and say light. We'll add a light component. Turn on shadows. You might not want to turn on shadows. It's obviously going to cost more performance. And let's go 15. Bring up the intensity to like a 4 or 5. You know, give it just a little bit of color. Take that down so we don't see that error. And then in the explosion, I'm going to go where it says lights. Turn that on. Take this guy, plug him in there, take the ratio to 1, take this guy and deactivate him. Now if I hit play, we have this kind of effect happening. So I'm going to add 1 more particle, and this one is going to be a longer duration. We'll go 15, not looping. Lifetime will be 15. Speed will be 0. Start size, 1 might work fine for this. And the emission, we can do 10, might be fine. And we're going to do a burst. So we'll do both, right? And then the shape can also probably be a sphere. And then we're going to come down to this velocity over lifetime. I'm going to open that guy up, and I'm going to adjust this to random between 2 constants, because we want the smoke to go up, say at a speed of 0.25 up to maybe a speed of 0.7. Now this thing starts turn, so let's flip that up right, and we can see now we have this smoke kind of rising thing. Now we could play with that a little bit here. In the velocity, let's close these down. We don't want to need. this one, because we also have this orbitals, and if I adjust the orbitals, you can do some really weird stuff. So for example, the Y orbital can give a really neat effect. So let's go and extend this out to a random between two constants and say -1 to 1. So now the orbital, it'll have that thing kind of going, some of them will be going around one way, and other one will be going around the other way. And you can start to have this effect. So let's go down to our renderer where we have this default particle system and bring in our smoke now. Right? And we can start to see it's, you know, looking like that. It looks a little hard. So let's go over to the color over lifetime. Make sure to bring these alphas down. And give it a little bit of alpha when it starts, over its life, you know, around here it could be something like that. Now we could also adjust the color, right? Let's add a few color markers. You just click and it just adds these markers. If you click and highlight one, hit delete, it'll delete one. So over here on near the end of its life, let's go quite dark, and over here go a little dark, and over here just kind of lightly dark, right? Something like that, you know. And we're going to start seeing that it's going to have this kind of fading and color effect to it. Right, starting to look a little more like smoke. So now let's add a little noise to the mix, right? So we're at strength. I'm just going to bring it down like 0.25 maybe. Frequency, yeah, 0.5 is fine. Let's give it a little bit of scroll speed, not much. And that's going to have these things starting to move around. So now they have the orbit and they got this kind of noise effect happening. Right, so now we're starting to see this kind of smoke happening. Cool. The size over lifetime. Oh, that's supposed to be on this guy. There we go. So there's a fly flying around. So let's take the strength down, scroll speed. Right, so that might be a little much on the there we go. Give that another whirl. That's looking better. Right, so the size over lifetime, right, so we have color over lifetime. We need size over lifetime on this guy. And we're going to do, it's going to go quite, well, maybe not too large, but let's try 12. Right, so now it's like, okay, well, that's a big chaotic mess there. So let's start it smaller. Maybe give it a little longer of a life. All right, now let's also, its rotation, let's flip that so it can kind of do a random rotation. Alright, so I think we should add a little more the rate over distance. I'm going to give it a little bit of that so it kind of feeds it a little more throughout the bottom. It'll kind of keep that feeding. And then that can be our, you know, we've shot and we've seen an explosion effect. right? And that's kind of how we can kind of make this stuff. So let's prefab this guy.